and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about 3 women's health books that you need to get started for your hormone balancing journey. I just so strongly believe that the more we can understand our minds and our bodies, how our bodies are aligned with our hormones, the science behind it, the better we are to make decisions and to even understand like why we might feel a certain way. So I'm excited today to dive into 3 books that have really helped me on my journey. I get a lot of questions of like, how did I get started teaching women's health? How did I learn so much about the female body? And it really started from just reading books. I was just fascinated by learning it. And when I was early on in my career, I used to have a really long commute. I think I traveled about an hour each way on public transportation. So I had a lot of time for reading, and I used to read like a book a week. So the books that I'm sharing with you today are 3 women's health books that I feel like every woman should read, especially just getting started, just kind of understanding what's going on. So one book is really going to be talking to you about like your psyche and like the female brain, which is different from men. So this is going to make like so much sense. And then how the brain chemistry changes in our brain based off of the hormonal element that we're at in our life, from like teenage years to being on the pill, to being off the pill, to motherhood, to perimenopause, to postpartum, like all the things in menopause. They also go through that. And then another one is going to be more about like spirituality mixed with, the science of the body, which is just really powerful. And then the last one will be about how to get started with cycle thinking, because I know that's also a big question that women in the Balanced Bombshells community has. So the first one is called Moody Bitches by Dr. Julie Holland. So it's the truth about the drugs you're taking, the sleep you're missing, the sex you're not having, and what's really making you crazy. So she is a psychiatrist based in New York City, and I have loved her research and what she's been able to do with the female brain. And I'm going to read a quote for you guys just to kind of understand the dynamic of women. So it says, as women, our interior lives are complex and ever-changing. Our neurotransmitters and our hormones, estrogen in particular, are intricately linked. When estrogen levels drop, as in PMS, postpartum, and perimenopause, it's common for moods to plummet as well. So basically, a lot of our hormones could be driving a lot of the emotions that we're feeling. So if you're like, wow, I've been really like over emotional, it's not wishing away our emotions. Basically, like the point of her book is basically being able to like, don't shut down your emotions. Don't think that they're wrong. Basically, it's an opportunity to dive deeper into yourself. And I've noticed emotionally, it tells me a lot of what my hormones are doing. So like with my clients, I'll ask them a lot of questions, and I ask them like how they feel at certain parts of their cycle. And it just helps me understand what their body is doing internally. So our emotions are really powerful as women. And so much of our society, and what Julie Holland talks about in the book, is so much about how we try to tune down our feelings as a way of pleasing others. And it becomes this way of people pleasing. And essentially we're thinking that something's wrong with us, or we like hold our emotions in, which causes a lot of stress, which creates a lot of inflammation, which of course goes into our hormones and our gut health, and feeling fatigue and moody and having period problems or having difficulty with fertility. Like all these things are intricately linked. And that's what she's talking about in that passage, which I feel like is so powerful. So then I had another one that I wanted to read for you guys from this book, basically about the difference between men and women. So men aren't built to be as sensitive as women are. Women have more brain circuitry, not only for expressing language and emotion, but also for detecting emotional nuance and anticipating what others are feeling. So basically, like, we're more empathetic. We can read people's nonverbal cues a lot better. We basically just are way more in touch with emotions more than men are. And that's basically a superpower that we have. So we can use that more to our advantage with ourselves and our relationship at work with our children. And it's really powerful to have. We just can get frustrated when we feel like men essentially don't mirror that back. And even just understanding like they don't have the same level of capacity emotionally that we do, just in terms of like how our brain chemistry works. But what I really love about her book is she dives into being on the pill versus not being on the pill, which I know is like a heavy topic with women in the reproductive years, especially if you've been on it for a while. You might be thinking like, do I still need to be on this? I was on the pill for about 9 years and I felt so much better off of it, to be completely honest. I will not go back to it. I've never tried the IUD. I personally will not put these things in my body ever again. And she kind of goes through about how these devices can essentially like turn off our feeling and emotional centers and can kind of make you feel, you don't feel ovulation because on the pill you're not ovulating, so you don't feel the same high energy, you don't feel the same charisma that you might have. Like some women can essentially just be walking around in life feeling kind of flat, and that's what the pill kind of does to our brain, and it mutes and suppresses hormone function, which when you get off the pill, if you don't know how to live in alignment with your body, you're going to notice a lot of these symptoms that come up. And basically those are your body saying, hey, you haven't actually taken the time to tune in and balance me and understand how to do that. So just even instead of wishing away these things, of just really honoring your body and tuning into it. And I felt like her book, I read it many years ago, and I end up recommending it to a lot of the women I work with because I feel like it's so powerful. And then she goes into how our brain chemistry changes when we become pregnant and become mothers. I'm going to cry, like just thinking of like pregnancy and my son, because I felt so rewired. I felt so empowered during that time. I felt like my brain chemistry was absolutely shifting. And it talks about how like mommy brain is a real thing where you just notice that you like forget a lot of things. I had a situation once where I went to like the post office when I was like 8 months pregnant. And instead of like stepping on the brake, I stepped on the gas and hit like this tree in the parking lot. It was like super minor tap, but still like just, I've never in my life done that before. And of course it would come up 8 months pregnant. So just even understanding how our brains change, and then, you know, what happens perimenopause and menopause and just what that does to our body. So I'm going to link all these books below, but definitely highly recommend Moody Bitches if you want to understand like the brain chemistry and just the feelings of women. I think it's such a powerful book. And the second book that I'm going to share with you is basically like a women's health manual. I definitely flipped through a lot of the chapters in here because it's long, but it is Women's Body, Women's Wisdom by Dr. Christiane Northrup. And she is a complete leader in women's health. I feel like she's so much my idol. I absolutely love her. She's written so many books on the female body. She focuses now on women aging gracefully and going through menopause and what that third act looks like. She is an OBGYN that balances the medical side of women's health, but then also is really spiritual and talks about our female energy system and how our internal organs are very deeply connected to our spirituality, our connection inside ourselves, our external environment, and basically how we interact with everything in our life. And I just love that she blends those worlds because I feel like it just really resonated with me. So if you're looking to align yourself more with your body and you've been feeling kind of out of touch, I feel like this book would be really beneficial. I have a lot of women that come into the Balanced Bombshells community who want to teach women's health. So this is a really great tool to be able to have if you're going to start your own practice on coaching women's health, which I think we need so many more coaches on women's health, but that's just my opinion. But I'm going to share a story that she reads in here about one of her patients. So one of my former patients, a social worker, originally came to see me complaining of PMS and mild anxiety attacks. In going over her history, I noticed that she never had any time to herself and that her life was overrun with taking care of others' needs while neglecting her own. I told her that she must practice knowing what activities replenished her energy and which ones drained her. Then I told her in order to reverse her symptoms, she had to spend at least 1 hour each day recharging her own energetic batteries by resting or doing something she enjoyed. She did so, and a month later, all her symptoms were gone. So I think that's really powerful because so much of our lives are taking care of others, our work, like basically trying to take care of ourselves, but essentially in the way of doing so, running ourselves into the ground. And then we're wondering why we're so tired and we have PMS or period problems or just all these like stress issues. All of those hormone symptoms that you experience is your body crying out in stress. So what I love about Dr. Northrup is that she's an OBGYN, and instead of a woman coming in and sharing how she's feeling and a doctor saying, you're fine and sending them home, she's really listening to them and just being, hey, I'm looking at you as a whole person and how you're living your life. And I'm recognizing that by not recharging and giving yourself time to be with yourself and doing things that you enjoy, you're overstressing your body. And that's part of what's contributing to the symptoms that you're experiencing. So it's also amazing to see what can happen when you give yourself what you need, like energetically, and able to step back and give yourself more self-care, and what changes that can do with our mental and emotional, physical health. Like it is huge. I used to operate my life on burnout. And I remember when I was starting Balance Bombshells in 2016, and I remember telling myself, like, you cannot focus on this business the same way that you run your entire career, because you're going to be so burnt out. You're going to be no use to anyone. So like, I believe so much in taking care of ourselves and honoring our bodies. And it's probably why I resonate so much with Dr. Northrup. So that is just an example of how she essentially treats patients and looks at the like female as a whole system, where our healthcare system today, like, you can go in and they basically don't listen to you. They're quick to take out a prescription pad and write you medication that you probably don't need, and just not necessarily fully listening. Or in my case, they would just send me home. And I'm like, I'm literally telling you I don't feel well. I'm telling you I'm having these symptoms. And for you to tell me that it's normal and to send me home, that's basically was my breaking point when I started to read all these books. So then she also talks about how we can align our energy centers with our chakras. So if you're spiritual at all, if you align with your 7 chakras, these are the 7 energy systems in our body. And she brings into like our health of how we can basically be using our chakras as well. So she says another issue for many women is shame, which, mic drop. So many women carry around a lot of shame that gets held within our bodies. So shame hits the first 3 female centers and the associated internal organs, including the uterus and ovaries. So that is very much like the female system. Shame can be a result of social programming that tells a woman she's inferior or that her genitalia themselves are shameful. This point of view is embedded deeply in our culture. The major nerve to the vulva is called the pudendal nerve. I'm probably butchering that. The root word means shame, basically. And basically is talking about how she talks a lot about our culture and society and how girls are always apologizing and carrying shame, and how much negative impact that has on our bodies. And it goes into our ovaries, our uterus, just like our menstrual cycles, and how we're supposed to essentially be as women. But she's also a leader in cycle syncing. She talks a lot about menstrual cycle in here. She talks about the 4 phases of our cycle. She talks about what each one feels like, what each one can look like. So regardless of where you are at in your journey, she covers basically all the components of a woman's health, basically from like her menstrual cycle, if you're going to be becoming a mom, if you're going to be going through perimenopause and menopause. I just feel like it's a good resource for us all to have, because we're going to come up against these situations in our life. So just being able to understand and be prepared for it. And it's such a beautiful read. I feel like she has such a beautiful energy. I feel like it shines through the page. And when I find books like that, I always want to be able to recommend them, because we just need that uplifting, positive energy in our life. So the third and final book is Woman Code, which you might know from Alyssa Vitti. So she's a women's health coach, and she started a practice called Flow Living, and she's also a leader in cycle syncing. So if you've been trying to understand, like, how do I bring in food and fitness and my life, and my lifestyle to be able to master cycle syncing, I think you're going to absolutely love this book. So I did feel very overwhelmed when I first read this book. So please just take everything with a grain of salt. There's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of, sometimes I felt like over your head information, where I felt like I had to read it like more than once to be able to fully understand it. Again, if you're looking to teach women's health, you'll probably really appreciate having this as a resource. But for your own individual health, take your time with it and just kind of pick the parts that resonate with you, because she's basically trying to write a book that covers a lot about hormone balance, and each person can be dealing with something a little bit different. So when I first read this book, I just felt like it was this mountain of information that made me feel like so much was wrong with me, which obviously isn't how we should be feeling. So just come in with a open mind and read and really tune into what resonates with you, because she's got a lot of super fantastic, helpful tips in here. And I felt like it was one of the first books that I read for our generation and age group where it made so much sense. Like, a lot of the books I read on hormonal health were for women 40 and over. And this is definitely written for women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, more of the younger component of hormonal health. And I found it so refreshing. She has another book that I haven't read yet. I feel like it's called something with like 28 days. I don't know. I can also link it in the comments in the description below. I haven't read it yet, but I know that a lot of women also really appreciate it for cycle syncing. I think it's more of like a hands-on tool for cycle syncing. But I love that she was able to educate us on like why hormonal symptoms might happen and the different organs in the body that we had to like pay more attention to. And then she does talk about each of the monthly phases, and she kind of breaks it down with like your hormone focus, your body focus, your lifestyle focus, a food focus, exercise focus. Like she really breaks it down and gets into the nitty gritty, which I feel like is extremely helpful. And she does that for each of the 4 phases. And then she also goes over how you can kind of fix some of your stress issues, how you can start eating for your cycle. She's got a really great chart that has the different foods. It's on page 159 about foods for your cycle. You can kind of see that. And so it kind of breaks it down of like a list of foods that you can start incorporating. I found that I intuitively already ate a lot of those foods at each part of the cycle. So if you're into practicing intuitive eating as well, you might notice that that feels really good for you. So here's one of her quotes that I feel like is very helpful of trying us to help us become more mindful of our body. So she says, think of aligning yourself with your endocrine system this way. When you're hungry, you know exactly what your body's trying to tell you. You don't feel your stomach growl or your energy sputter and wonder what's going on. No, you make a beeline for the closest source of fuel so you can satisfy your empty belly. In much the same way, you're going to be able to interpret your endocrine system's signals as seamlessly as you do hunger and give the system the TLC it needs to perform beautifully at all times. So I love that because so much of cycle syncing is becoming more aligned with our body. And she's associating the body with the endocrine system, which is your hormone system, which basically is like what's running your cycle. It's running our stress that we're feeling. It's running our digestion. It runs like basically all the inner systems of our body. And by aligning ourselves and the activities we do, the food that we eat, the people we surround ourselves with, the environments that we're in, basically all these books are saying that has such a huge impact on our emotional, physical, and mental health because it all comes together. And the more we can see each other as a whole person and not think like, oh, I have PMS, or like, oh, I'm feeling bloated, or oh, I have a breakout. Oh, this is just something I have to deal with. I have gone through so many ups and downs with my hormone journey. And now that I've been on the other side of it since 2016, like it is completely life-changing. And I'm very excited to be able to share these resources with you so you can get started on your own. And I know getting started can feel really overwhelming. I'm here for you. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below, or you can email me directly at laura@balancebombshells.com. I love hearing from you guys. I love being able to know what kind of questions you guys have. I'm just like your regular girl who went through this as well. So I totally understand the overwhelm and just kind of feeling like, where do I turn to even understand and what resources are available for me? So I hope these 3 books really help you.